Most art forgers copy a famous painting and hope no one notices. Wolfgang Beltracchi did something far more dangerous. He didn't copy paintings, he invented them. Brand new lost masterpieces by famous artists, painted entirely from his own imagination, in their exact style. For nearly 40 years, he fooled the world's top experts, auction houses, and museums. He sold hundreds of fakes for tens of millions of dollars. One forgery even fooled the foundation dedicated to the artist he was imitating. And he was finally undone by a single tube of white paint. Wolfgang Beltracchi was a genuinely gifted painter from Germany with a deep understanding of art history and an uncanny ability to absorb and reproduce another artist's style, their brushwork, their palette, their way of seeing. But he didn't want to be a struggling original artist. He wanted money and a lavish life. So he turned his talent to forgery, working with his wife Helene, who handled much of the selling. His insight was brilliant and ruthless. The problem with copying an existing painting is that the original exists, comparisons can expose you. But if you create a new work that the artist could plausibly have painted but that no catalog records, there's nothing to compare it to. You're not faking a known painting. You're inventing a discovery. Beltracchi targeted early 20th century modern masters, artists like Max Ernst, Heinrich Campendonck, Fernand Léger, and others whose catalogs had gaps, where works were known to have been lost or destroyed during the chaos of the world wars. He would paint a lost work in the artist's style, then construct an elaborate false history of provenance to explain where it had been all these years. His masterstroke was the invention of fake art collections. He claimed the paintings came from the collection of his wife's grandfather, who had supposedly acquired them before the war. To support this, the couple staged photographs. Helene, dressed in vintage clothing and styled to look like her own grandmother, posed in a period-appropriate room beside the forged paintings, the images artificially aged to look decades old. He sourced genuinely old canvases in frames. He aged everything meticulously. He even faked old gallery labels on the backs. And it worked, spectacularly, for decades. Experts authenticated his inventions. Auction houses sold them. They hung in collections and exhibitions. He sold an estimated several hundred forgeries, earning tens of millions of dollars. One of his fake Max Ernst paintings was authenticated by a leading Ernst expert and the artist's own foundation, and sold for millions. He lived like a wealthy man, vineyards, properties, a yacht, all funded by paintings that famous dead artists never actually made. The empire of fakes was brought down by chemistry. In 2008, a forged Campendonck painting that Beltracchi had created titled Red Picture with Horses was subjected to detailed scientific pigment analysis. The analysis found a problem in the white paint. Beltracchi had been extraordinarily careful to use only pigments that were available during the period he was imitating. But on this painting, he had used a tube of white paint that, unknown to him, contained titanium white, and the specific formulation contained a trace of a pigment that had not been commercially available at the time the painting was supposedly created. He had trusted the paint tube's label. The label was wrong. One contaminated tube exposed a forgery, and once investigators pulled that thread, the whole tapestry of fakes began to unravel. Beltracchi, his wife, and accomplices were arrested. In 2011 he was convicted of forgery. Because authorities could only definitively prove a fraction of his fakes, he was charged in connection with a limited number of paintings, but the financial damage proven was already enormous. He received a relatively light sentence, 6 years, served partly in open prison that allowed him to paint during the day. After his release, in a final twist, Beltracchi became a celebrity. He gave interviews, published a book, and now openly sells his own original work and authentic Beltrachis, trading on his fame as the man who fooled the art world. Beltracchi's career is a devastating indictment of how the art world decides what's real. A painting's authenticity is supposed to rest on connoisseurship, the trained eye of experts, and on provenance, the documented history of where a work has been. Beltracchi defeated both. His painting skill fooled the eyes. His invented collections and staged photographs fabricated the history. The experts were authenticating with their judgment and with paperwork, and he supplied exactly what each of those systems was looking for. What he couldn't fake was the physics. The pigments in the paint didn't care how convincing the brushwork was or how aged the photograph looked. The science was the one witness that couldn't be charmed. It's a pattern that runs through the great forgery cases. Human judgment, social proof, and documentation can all be engineered by a skilled deceiver. The thing that catches them is almost always objective: physical testing, the brightener in the Hitler Diaries paper, the trace element in Beltracchi's white. The takeaway for anyone evaluating a high-stakes claim is the same. Expert opinion and impressive paperwork can be manufactured. Independent, physical verification is much harder to fake. When the stakes are high enough, don't authenticate with your eyes and the story you've been told. Test the thing itself. Subscribe. New case every Friday.